Are you very passionate about things that you believe in? I hope you are. In fact, I think anything that you really believe in, you should believe fully and passionately. However, when we talk to other people that might see things differently, it's a great opportunity for there to be conflict, to be tension. And when we are leaders, and if you are leading, maybe you're a coach, you're a manager, or you're just trying to have a conversation that leads into a positive way, how do we make sure that our passion or the passion of the other person doesn't run away in such a way that it makes us have more conflict and less resolution? If you would like to know more about how to make sure that we don't let our passions get away from us to where we get more conflict, but rather we find a way to get more resolution, keep listening to this podcast. We all know that communication skills are crucial for any relationship. And when somebody has those skills, oh my gosh, they make so much of an impression to you and to me. But we've also had those moments where we're really nervous to talk with people because we don't know how our request or our message will be received. Well, this podcast, fortunately, is going to go over all the things, the science, the tips, the tricks, and the ways to make sure that you can have the best relationships that you can through the way that you communicate. And after listening to these episodes, you can do so fearlessly with confidence, knowing that you can be relatable to anybody you choose. Welcome to the Attractive Relationships Podcast. In this podcast today, this was inspired by several conversations I've had recently. And I'm going to tell you one that I had with an executive leader at a particular company that I was talking to potentially do business with. And this person really, really cares about customer service. He really cares about performance. He really cares about the dynamics within his company. But then he shared something that was his own personal bias. And as an expert in trying to communicate to people, I thought, man, if we don't say this correctly, it will turn the staff against him instead of being for the cause. Maybe you've had a boss before and you've experienced it, or maybe you've had a parent or a significant other that has a very, very strong opinion, and they come to you with, for the lack of a better word, authority, although that might work in a workplace setting. Maybe your boss comes with their authority and says, you're doing something incorrectly. You're not doing the best. You're not upholding the standard that we have. And therefore you need to do this, right? And that sort of tone that comes across, like, how do you feel when somebody talks to you that way? It's very shaming. It makes you feel like you're less than, or it makes you feel like you're being judged without any discussion of why you did things the way you did, or maybe some of the challenges that you may be facing that is making it difficult for you to meet a certain level of standard. These are the situations where our passions, especially when we believe passionately about a particular way of doing something, this can interfere with the actual end result that we want, which is for other people to meet us where we're at on whatever that belief or standard is. So what is the way to communicate? So that way, when we say something, it doesn't make other people feel inferior. Because even if the truth is the other person is not meeting a certain standard, even if that's the truth, here's the other truth. They are going to be less likely to meet that standard if we come at them in an aggressive or even passive aggressive way that makes them feel less than. It doesn't inspire them to want to do what you say. And yet, this is the way a lot of leaders, or I won't even say leaders, this is the way a lot of people with authority try to lead. If there's anything from this podcast, I would love for you to take away, especially if you're in leadership, coaching, any position of authority, is that authority and respect are two different things. Oftentimes, people with authority feel like they are not being respected when their team or their staff isn't doing what they want them to do. However, just because you have the authority, if people are only doing what you ask because you have the authority over them, but they're not doing it out of the respect for you, the leader, then what we have is a dynamic where people are literally motivated out of fear and nothing else. And so if we understand what actually motivates people, even if the people that we're talking to are not quite meeting a certain standard, we can speak in a way that's a little bit different, to where they're not being motivated because they're afraid of consequences, but they're being motivated because of something that is better than that and longer lasting, and will show the true respect that you want to have from those that are within your leadership. So let me talk about the four things. Like, this is the way you speak to somebody. Even if you're passionate, you want to be able to speak to people, because people are motivated in one of four, or any of these four ways, really, or any combination. This is again by somebody that you may have heard of. His name is Andrew Bustamante. He is the owner of the company called Everyday Spy. And this is the things that he's learned as a CIA operative that gets people inspired or motivated to do anything. The one that we just talked about is the third way, which is coercion or consequence, right? So if you, as a person of authority, come in very passionate and shames people and tells them you need to do better because I'm the boss and I said so, that person might do what you say for fear of getting shamed again, or fear of losing their job per se. And even though that can work short term, it never works long term. And what I would challenge is in this question: do you really think somebody's going to want to give you their best effort if they're only doing it out of fear of consequence? Chances are you will have an entire staff that only wants to do things at the bare minimum. Like, what's the least amount I need to do to make sure I don't get in trouble? And that's not ideal for any of us in any kind of relationship and whatever status that we may have. But the other three are very good at pulling the best out of people. Now, the one that may be the least effective of the other three, is going to be reward. So for some people, they're really driven by reward. For example, I've seen some leaders kind of make almost a competition, or almost say something like, if you do this thing, I'm going to give you a gift card to your favorite place, right? And for some people, that's enough. Or I'm going to give you a bonus, or I'm going to give you something in exchange for the extra that you're doing. Now, that's way more positive than motivating people due to consequence. However, similar to consequence, rewards are short-lived, because once the person has the reward, they may not be as inspired to continue working that hard. The good news is that you would have seen them demonstrate what they're capable of, and you can use then the other parts of what really motivate people and motivates that person, and maybe bring that out to help them see their best. The other way, the second way, so they're going to get reward. The second way would be through ideology. Like, what does this person really believe? For example, if somebody was trying to motivate me, I really believe in trying to help people be the best versions of themselves. And if somebody can speak to me in those terms and says, Rico, if you do this, you will help the other person be the best version of themselves, or this is going to bring out the best version of you, right? If somebody coached me that way or instructed me that way, I am far more inclined to help other people do the same. If you talk to somebody who believes in fairness, right, and you can walk to them and say, if you do this, we believe that this is the most fair for everybody, right? And now that person might be inclined to say, you know what, I agree with you. Hey guys, real quick, I am sure that all of us have had the moments where we're a little nervous or afraid to talk to somebody because we don't know how they're going to respond. Are we going to be able to talk to our life partner without them getting upset? Or are we going to talk to our boss to get that raise or that interview for that job? Uh, if we ever get nervous in those moments, we have to fearlessly communicate in a way that's effective to get the things we want and need. And if you want to know how to consistently do that, there's a formula and a program on exactly how to do that. And it's called the Be Fearless and Effective Communicators Program. If you are interested in learning more about that, you can click the link that's in the show notes, or you can go to attractiverelationships.com/fearless. All right. So we got reward. We've got ideology, like what do people really believe within themselves? A side note, this also aligns with purpose. All right. And I've talked about this in other podcast videos that if you know your purpose and you can speak to that person's purpose, that goes along with their ideology. Very, very, very powerful, and arguably the most powerful way to get people to a certain standard that you want to be. If you got what you want to tie into their purpose and ideology, you can get that person's best in whatever it is you're trying to do. The third way we've already talked about, that's the consequence. And the last one is about the ego. It's about how does this make the person look if they perform a certain way. So if this person is concerned about their status or their image, that is also, I would say, arguably the second most strong way to get people inspired to move in a direction you want them to. Now, this is different, again, than the consequence, than just simply coming with authority. So, for example, when I was talking to that executive earlier, this was through an email exchange. He asked his company of a few things, a few questions. Not everybody responded. And his response was clearly we need to have a discussion on authority and respecting authority and uh, and basically high expectations of standards. And while I don't disagree with that, what I also thought is if we just came that way, you need to respect authority more often. How is that going to be received? Again, if you have a bias of what you believe is right, even if it's true, it doesn't matter if it's true or not, if it's not said correctly, if you're not saying it in a way that shows that you are aligning what you believe with their true purpose and belief, or if you're not aligning how you feel about respect for authority and with how it affects your audience's ego. If you don't do it that way, that means the only other way you're doing it is in a way that says you're doing it because I said so. That's a problem. That's a problem. So how do you come across if you have a bias? And this is where I always say uh, the three C's that I always talk about. If you lead with curiosity, then add clarity and make sure you're courteous. Right. So if you have a strong bias about something, lead with curiosity first. So in the case of this particular manager, they might say, I've noticed that it has been a struggle for some of us to respond to emails in a timely manner. I imagine that it can be difficult. Am I incorrect? See, that's leading with curiosity, right? You set an observation. I was like, am I correct that it is difficult? And now you got everybody engaged, and everybody now feels like you care about them. And then the next thing you can say is to clarify what you really mean to say. Hey, responding to the emails is very important because when we don't respond to the emails on time, it can affect other people's jobs. And I know that you care about the team and how we all get our jobs done. And I also know, connect this to the ego, that it looks bad when we don't respond a certain way, especially to our vendors. And I know that's not what you intend. How can we make this better? All right. And now we're going to invite that collaborative energy to where they are invested in the solution. Talking that way sounds better than, You need to respect authority more, and next time I send you an email, you need to respond. Any questions? You feel the difference in that. This is also true if you're trying to give somebody like a one-on-one advice. So I had recently lost a friend because I am going through something that's pretty significant in life right now. And one of my friends just left me a voice memo and said, "This is what a real man should do. And if you're not a real man, then you won't respond to this message." Which of the 3 C's did this person violate? Well, that's the third one, where you got to be courteous, right? You don't want to make people feel less than. You don't want to make people feel judged, because people stop listening after that. And people just become really defensive. They're guarding their emotions. All right. Clearly, this person that I used to be friends with had a very passionate, strong opinion about something. But I also do too. And it's hard to have those vulnerable conversations where we might have a difference of opinion if one or both of us is attacking the other person, telling them they're wrong, telling them they're less than, telling them they're not being good enough. How do you have a collaborative conversation when one or both parties are like that? So I hope this podcast is reaching those of you who really do care about the relationships that you have with people. I hope this podcast is reaching you if you really are passionate about things that you believe in. I believe everybody should be that way. I don't think anybody should really believe in something that they're not passionate about, or vice versa. However, we also have to recognize that everybody else has their beliefs that might be different from. And instead of making people feel less than or telling them that they're wrong as a way to try to shame them into our way of thinking, lead with curiosity, just like with that executive that I mentioned earlier. We lead with curiosity, then add some clarity and avoid the shaming and judging part of it. And I might add a 4th step. Finish with curiosity in the way that is, how do we collaborate? How do we together find the solution to help us come to that resolution, or help us to meet the standard that is important when we're working with each other? That's what a good leader does. And when a good leader communicates in this way, that leader gains the respect of those that are following them, that are under their authority, and they get the best out of the people within their charge. And that's when magic really starts to happen. So again, that is all for this episode. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I look forward to chatting with you guys next time. As we come to the end of another episode of Attractive Relationships, I want to express my gratitude to you for tuning in. Your support really does mean the world to me. Now, if this episode brought you any value, I would truly appreciate it if you shared this podcast with anyone that you think could benefit from our discussions on effective communication and relationship building. Until next time, remember, great relationships start with great communication. So stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep building those attractive relationships.